Today at As the Wood Turns Studio and Gallery, we're going to be making a Christmas tree light ornament. Something I saw online and decided it looked fairly simple to do, and it's pretty quick as well. I made mine out of some oak scraps I had lying around. The scraps, or the blank, is about an inch square, maybe 3 inches long. And the turning is done only with a skew, and the coloring is also done on the lathe. And the final product will look something like this. There'll be variations um, as they're all being hand turned. The neck has copper tubing with it, and then the top is an eye screw. We won't put those parts on the video. We'll just show the turning and the coloring. The adhering of the copper tubing and the eye screw is pretty self-explanatory. So follow along, and thanks for joining us here at the As the Wood Turns Studio and Gallery. Please let me know if you have any questions, and as always, subscribe if you like what you see for more content. Thanks. Here we have the blank mounted in the chuck. Going to turn it using the skew, as I said before. Got to turn this round, and then we'll lay out the neck first, then to proceed with the rest of the turning. We have it almost round. Take just a little bit more off here, and then we'll start paring down the end of this into a neck that will fit the copper tubing that I'm using to create the neck and cover that, in which the eye screw will go into. It's important here the diameter of the neck here is accurate. I use this short piece of that copper tubing to go ahead and make sure that it's where I need it to be. And then using the skew, doing a round over from the neck into the body of the light bulb, and then we'll start turning the rest of it down to shape. Now that we've got that curve there where we want it, let's start removing some excess material to get down to a point and refine it to a shape that we like. We'll have to leave it a little thick at the end here while we do any final sanding and coloring. If you get too thin, it's way too weak, and any kind of pressure or catch could break it off, which would ruin the whole piece. Do some last little bit refining here. Remove just a little bit more material here to get to where I need it to be currently. And then we'll stop the lathe to give it a look to make sure there are no gouges or catches in it. And then we could look at sanding. Do the sanding here. Even with the skew, sometimes oak, which is a little more coarse grain, can be a little difficult to get it really smooth with the skew. So I'm starting with a little bit higher grit of sandpaper, and we'll finish it off with 150, which for this type of item is high enough in the grit to get it smooth. Sanding's never fun, but at least on the lathe that doesn't take too much. With a higher speed, it'll sand this up pretty fast. Now that the sanding is done, I want to go ahead and give it one more quick look here. It looks good. Put the tool rest back in place, give it a spin just to make sure nothing's going to hit. I want to refine that point a little bit more before I do any coloring. That way, when it gets parted off, there'll be very little material to remove. Things look pretty good, so let's go ahead and do some coloring. If you're doing just a few of these, a paint pen will work very well. You can leave it in the lathe and just spin it by hand, or turn it on to a slow if you have an electronic variable speed lathe like I do. To color the piece, it's fairly simple. Just load the tip of the paint pen and hold it against the piece as it spins to give it the color. If you're doing a lot of these, I wouldn't do it this way, and I'm going to be doing a lot of these, so I'm building a tray that I can use to then use spray paint to paint all of these. But again, if you're just doing a few of them, a paint pen works just as well. Gave it a quick look there. Need to put a little bit more color towards the top. You'll see here in a bit, I'll stop it. And then it's a situation where it didn't take the paint the way I like, so I had to put some more in there. The one nice thing about doing finishes on the lathe is you can use a paper towel or cloth of some sort and turn the lathe back on and actually use it to dry the finish. This creates heat from the friction, which will then dry the finish. It moves things along pretty fast. Stop the lathe here, give it one more quick look. I think it's good. We'll go ahead and part it off right there at that point. It just needs a couple of shallow cuts actually to get it to drop off here. Do need to give it some support there, and so it doesn't break before it actually cuts clear. Give that point a couple of hits with the sandpaper, pick up the paint pen again, color that point, and then this piece will actually be ready to take a piece of copper tubing, put it around that neck. I use super glue, and then once that's dry, go ahead and put a finish on it, and if I can hang on to it, put a finish on it. I use a spray finish on this one, and then put the eye screw in, and we're done.